Welcome to I Love This Thing So Frigging Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Sally Haddon, a professor of history and law who absorbs English theater through all means possible. Welcome to the show, Sally.
Hi.
Hi. So, here is how this works. Sally will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Sally?
I'm ready.
Great. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so frigging much?
The thing I friggin' love is Simon Russell Beale's acting ability. Russell Beale is an English actor who is extremely well known in England, but barely known in America. When he arrived in New York to play the lead in Chekhov's Uncle Vanya in 2003, the New York Times ran his picture and a story with it on the front of the arts section with the headline, "The Greatest Actor Americans Have Hardly Seen." Not much has changed since 2003 for most Americans. However, I was one of the lucky ones who did know him. I'd seen him first in 2000 on the London stage in Hamlet, the role that cemented his reputation as one of the outstanding actors of his generation. Though I've seen him in 25 different productions through the years, it was his performance in Hamlet that I still think may have been his best. Perhaps that's because the character Hamlet is trying to process his grief for his dead father through most of that play. And at the time he played Hamlet, Russell Beale had just lost his own mother and was experiencing true grief himself. I can't convey to you by words alone the fullness of what makes Simon Russell Beale a marvelous actor. I can tell you what he's not. He's not handsome, and he's famously had an adversarial relationship with being overweight from time to time. Perhaps it's because he's not classically good-looking that he can move from role to role and continue to be utterly convincing. I've seen him play dreadful tyrants, King Lear, Joseph Stalin, to the point that you'd believe him capable of murder and much worse. His career started, though, in comedy at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he literally leaves audiences rolling in the aisles. His King Arthur in Monty Python's Spam-A-Lot was ridiculously perfect. I've seen him play acting the part of an awkward child, Philip Lehman in the current Lehman trilogy, and I've watched him go completely over the top wearing a Carmen Miranda fruit bowl on his head in Farce. His pudgy face and everyman type of body lets him blend in when he wants to and stand out when he wants to. Russell Beale isn't just physically talented, though. He graduated with a first in English from Cambridge, and he's described acting as three-dimensional literary criticism. He gets to know a play like an English professor would, and he's been called the thinking man's actor because he's so cerebral. He's also versatile. He's won multiple Oliviers, England's equivalent of the Tony Award, for roles in comedy, drama, and even a musical. He's got a thriving career on BBC Radio as a performer, and right now, while theaters are shut during the pandemic, he's continuing his other gig as a vocal artist, plus he's writing. He's publishing a weekly column in the Times of London called My Lockdown Journal, and each column ends with him reading poetry. But as good at writing as he is, his acting's much better. Should you ever have the opportunity to see Simon Russell Beale on a stage, go. Get whatever ticket you can and prepare to be amazed.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, there's the end of the timer. Thank you for telling us about Simon Russell Beale today.
Terrific.
Oh, goodness. Where to start? How about let's start at the beginning. You said you were there at that 2000 performance of Hamlet, which was the one that really took off his career. Can you tell me a little more about what it was like to be in that audience? Did you know back then you were seeing something amazing?
Yes and no. I, at that point, had seen theater some, but I wouldn't have called myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I went with a friend of mine who is a drama professor. He teaches directing and acting. And when we walked out, I was still so stunned that I turned to him and I said, "Was that as good as I thought it was?" And he said, "Better." And then he spent the next 90 minutes telling me, from a technical point of view, why it was the best Hamlet that he'd seen in decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how you know, I think that's part of how you know something's really good, when it wows people who don't know anything about the craft, but also people who can acknowledge how difficult it is.
Yeah, Russell Beale is amazing in that he got a great start really at the Royal Shakespeare Company as a young man, and they do voice training, movement training, fight training, and so he really got a solid grounding in the craft. But it all just came right out on that stage when he played Hamlet, and I was fortunate to have a real pro with me to help me spot stuff that even I didn't see as a novice.
Can you talk a little more about how you described him as a thinking person's actor?
Sure. He actually enjoys thinking his way through a part on a really deep philosophical level, and it comes from having been trained in college to do textual analysis and close reading, and he participates in a number of it's not just that he went to college and learned how to do textual analysis and close reading. He really is a close reader of text and gets inside of a character. One of the things that makes him gifted is that he typically will learn an entire part without any of the plans for how that part will be played before the first rehearsal starts. Mm-hmm. And so he walks in knowing the text cold, but the interpretation then is something that's malleable and they can play with in rehearsal. I've been lucky enough to see him do a couple of platforms for the National Theater, and the platforms are question and answer sessions, and he's very good at thinking on his feet about what, and talking about his experiences as an actor. He's a really smart guy. He's also been really lucky. He's worked with all the best stage directors of his generation, and so sometimes a career is being good at craft, and sometimes it's being just innately gifted. He's got a gift for physical comedy, but I mean he's just had really good luck. He fell in with Sam Mendes when Mendes was young, and Mendes went on to win an Oscar for Best Director for American Beauty, and he's directed a couple of Bond films, and I mean, so he's had opportunities to work with guys who work with directors who are really at the top of their game.
And now everyone else has the honor of working with him as well.
That's it. And he's by all accounts, by what other actors say about him and other directors as well, he's apparently like the nicest guy ever. So he says, please and thank you, and, says goodnight to the doorman when he goes out, the side, out the stage door and all the rest. And, he seems to be, in terms of when you see him on television getting interviewed or on those National Theater live platforms, he seems to just be a genuinely nice guy.
That's something you always hope with the people you're fans of, that you hope that they're actually a nice person.
Yeah, and that it would be easy to be a jerk, and in fact, his columns in the Times the last couple of weeks they're very personal, in a way that the text is his as opposed to Shakespeare's or Chekhov's, and he's been able to talk about things lost and opportunities found, and the joy and the sadness of having moved out of London right before this happened. And so, I mean, it's interesting when the text is his, the voice that comes through still seems charming and sweet.
I like how you keep saying that the text is his, that it's, as the actor, it becomes his interpretation of it as much as anything else. Would you say that following the column that he's writing for the Times is where the words are his own? Mm-hmm. That's what I meant by he's making the text his own. But when he's preparing for a role, of course he's trying to inhabit the role and make the role one that he can perform within. Yeah. Do you think that following Russell Beale and his career since you mentioned that when you saw him you didn't know much about theater, how much of an influence do you think following him has had on what you think about theater overall?
It made me wonder if I'd been missing out for the first 35 or 40 years of my life had I not been going to enough theater, and it turned me into a real London theater junkie. I've probably been to at least 400 productions in the last 20 years. I go a lot, and that's living in the Midwest. That's really incredibly difficult.
Yeah, my goodness. again.
That's right.
Sally, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Thanks, Sophie.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you would like to learn more about Sir Simon Russell Beale, you can find some links to his work in the episode description. And don't forget to use the hashtag #LoveThisThingCast to tell us about the things you love. I Love This Thing So Frigging Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed by Sophie A. Katz and edited by Melissa Block. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU The Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.